If you go back just 100 years, there were in the region of somewhere like 6,000 different apple species in the world. But if you go in a supermarket today, it's very rare to see more than 12 different varieties of apples. Humans are waging war against biodiversity in this world.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, everyone. Now, a few weeks ago, we answered the question about whether or not we ate seeds and nuts. And somebody asked in the comment about the seeds that are inside the fruit. Now, we did address that in the video. The seeds in the fruit, we said they benefit from passing through the body and coming out the other side. It helps them in the germination process. But they pushed the question, the person, and wanted to know, what about the ones that we crush with our teeth? Because inevitably some of the seeds are going to get destroyed or damaged throughout the process. And well, we can't deny that every now and again, there are going to be some seeds that don't actually make it out the other end intact. That's inevitable. But this is something completely different to going out and buying seeds for the sole intention of destroying them through the eating process. And secondly, the damage done to the seed or the destruction of seed is very, very minimal. In fact, especially with someone like myself with the few teeth that I have, there's not going to be many seeds that get damaged at all. And we're aware of that when we're eating. So when we eat a fruit like a passion fruit, we would never ever dream of crunching and chewing on and destroying the seed. In fact, we're very gentle. We're always aware that there's seed in there. And if you eat something like strawberries or kiwi, even the biting process is not going to destroy the seed because they're so small and they're not as fragile as you think they are. They're going to pass through. And when you're eating it, even when I have teeth, if you're eating something and you feel it's a seed, I would deliberately not crush it. And I think that's an intentional thing that we can all do, is to be more aware when we're eating seed to pass it through. Of course, it won't make any difference. If you're going to just poo in the toilet anyway, you're getting rid of the seeds. So it doesn't really make any difference whether you're destroying them in the process or if you're destroying them in the toilet. Either way, you're destroying them. And the idea is obviously you've got to get out on the land somewhere where you can return your poo back into the land, which is what we do. And we put it all under the tree. So we get tomato plants with chili plants that are coming up sort of everywhere because of this process that we have where we just let things happen more naturally. Of course, if you're using a toilet, that's not going to be the case. But that's how it is for people that are living in this city. You're going to be destroying seed when you're eating those kind of fruit. It's up to the individual what you think about that and how you handle it. That's little. If you live on the land, lots of people also in Australia, for us to have a composting toilet. That's also very good. But you don't have even that. You have a it's done. And as Mango said, if you intently and consciously look up those before you aware of what you're doing, most in those kind of fruit are tiny. You don't even have a chance to crush it with your mouth. Also, things are made to survive because if are pretty very important mercy. They have inside life. But next generation of that certain friend. It's the long. Lot of bird is the thing.
Every year, there is a certain seed on a certain eucalyptus tree, and
the bricks that are those coming, and just mention they will come in as this little dreaming here, launching little branches coming on the ground. And it's just such an amazing event every year, although it's looking further to it. We do have a separate little bucket. I've mentioned it multiple times, I think. We have a little bucket where we put the seed from the fruit that we eat. Obviously not the ones that pass through us, but the seeds that we can take out ourselves, and we'll store those in wasteland next to the property. So we'll give them a chance, and there are some trees coming up. But I'd like to go back to the fact that we put waste underneath the trees in the garden, because I know a lot of people may think that human waste is toxic. There is this school of thought that goes around that human waste is toxic and you shouldn't put it back in the ground. And that maybe is the case for most people who are eating the standard diet of it's less than 2 veg. But when you're eating only fruit, your waste is not at all toxic and it then breaks down and gets eaten up by the worms. I can put it down somewhere and come back a few days later and it's fully gone. There's no trace of it left. That's one thing I'd like to say. And secondly, I'd like to add that we have a symbiotic pact with the fruit-bearing plant where they benefit from us taking away their fruit with the seed inside and dispersing it somewhere else. The ones that have the seed inside, it's part of how nature is that plant is benefiting from you taking it away and eating it. Obviously, as I said before, if you're pooing in the toilet, it's not going to help at all. But if you're doing things in a more natural way, that's how nature is propagating itself. And the seed is very precious to the plant, and we should honor that, respect it, because we are given the fruit freely by the tree, by the plant, and therefore that symbiotic pact is to respect the seed that's there and at least give it a fighting chance. Do the best we can to give it a fighting chance, which includes all levels. Like if we have a seed, don't just put them in the rubbish bin and let them get shipped up somewhere to a landfill. Don't just throw in the toilet. Be respectful of those. Be respectful of the seed. Obviously, you're not. Most of the seed is not going to germinate. Most of the seed is not going to have a chance. That is the way it is. Now, I think a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the balance of nature and how things are at the moment as they are, and that it does not have to be this way, but that's how things are. And part of the way things are now is that there are an abundance of seed because the tree knows that so many of them are not going to survive. Like with the black cockatoo that Kritika just mentioned, that come and strip the tree of their seed. That's why the tree has so many of them, so that some of them will actually survive and not get eaten. I wouldn't want people to think, there's so many almonds, so it's okay if I eat them, because I'm just an animal too. And just like the cockatoos, I'll strip them and eat them. Because with humans, we can be much more systematic. We can strip the tree of every single seed because we think there's profit to be made from it. It's not how we should be thinking. Animals do what they do, and that's outside of our control currently. That's the way things are. But it doesn't mean we should look to them as an example. And this is again going back to the balance of nature video that we made a couple of weeks ago. We shouldn't be looking to other species as an example for how we live our lives. We should live our lives following our heart. I think that's very, very important to do.
That's right. Also, you can learn from any species something. You can learn something from rice. You can learn from things from the behavior of different animals. They all have a different behaviors, pattern, and habit. But so it's the human, and we should maybe get inspired from them in certain levels. But as my understanding, to start all, you have to always go by our hearts.
Indeed, be inspired by them if they're doing something that's good, that you think, wow, that is ingenious, that's really clever. Maybe even kind or compassionate thing to be doing, and be inspired. But don't just take everything at face value and think, well, that's how it's being done, so I'm going to do it through. Don't do that. That's not what we're there for.
And what animal you would actually choose for the example? It doesn't make sense over. You should just, as the people who should be inspired you by what they discovered in their life and what they experience and learn from their experience. And not, it's just somebody saying, I think it's this way, or somebody who is full of it, but nothing practical. Or it's just people just are feeling things often, even though scientists, they really don't know. They still, we think it's that.
Scientists are incredibly destructive. The whole field of science really is all about destruction. it's not the way to go. Even us, when we say something, don't just take it on board as being right. Obviously, we're human too. We make mistakes. We're telling you what we think, and you must look at what we're thinking and look if it resonates with your own heart. And if it does, then take it on board. If it doesn't, then reject it.
Yeah.
Because that's for you to follow your heart. And the more you do that, the more you can follow your own heart, the easier it will be for you to continue doing so. Yeah.
That's this everything out. Everything, that's this, you get
Get better at it, yeah. Another thing I want to mention is, well, I think is very important, and I probably mentioned it in the video before about eating nuts and seeds, is that humans are waging war against biodiversity in this world. So we're just completely obliterating so many different varieties of species out there. Species too. I mean, we're in the middle of the 6th mass extinction at the moment, but even beyond that, we're just destroying varieties of things. So we're reducing everything down to what's profitable. So if you go in a supermarket and look at apples, which are available all over the world, it's very rare to see more than 12 different varieties of apples. Everybody knows Granny Smith. Everybody knows Red Delicious, or there are a few that name that we're all going to know. But if you go back just 100 years, and they were counted how many different species of apples there were, and they were in the region of somewhere like 6,000 different apple species in the world. And now you're only going to find 12. Of course, you'll find some heirloom species that are still being bought and sold somewhere. If you're lucky at some farmer's market, somebody might be growing them. But generally speaking, there's no longer that biodiversity of species is no longer growing. It was always doing before, always growing. Because every time you eat an apple and you plant the seed, you don't know exactly what you're going to get. There's very few fruit that bear fruit at type that will give you exactly what you had at the beginning. They cross-pollinate. You might have Granny Smith here and a Red Delicious there, and the two of them cross-pollinate and produce an entirely different species of apple. But because now everything is about monocropping, so when people grow apples, they'll just grow one particular variety because that's all they want to grow. So this is showing you that even fruit isn't perfect. Even fruit isn't as it should be in this world. Nothing is really perfect on any level. So I think that you have to be aware of this, that we're not living in a perfect world, which is all the more reason why we should be getting out and back onto the land and planting our own fruit trees, taking care of the land ourselves in a way which we know is respectful to the land, to the insects, to the animals that are living on that land, which is not what any commercial farmer is doing. They don't have respect for the land. No matter what you might think, farming is not a respectful practice, but very, very destructive, especially anything that's monocrop. It's really fighting the way nature is, or the way nature should be, really, because there should be such a diversity of species all around us, of fruit trees, of everything intermingling, intergrowing with each other. And that's not what they're after, because commercially, that's not a good business practice.
That's so true. This is the key. Go back to nature as much as you can, because that's what they can waste them. In the old days, everybody had their own land.
I don't know exactly what the population of the world is at the moment, but it's around about 8 billion. Well, give or take 1 billion. And people think, oh, that's a lot of people. But the earth is very small. It's true. And there's mismanagement of land everywhere. And we're all herded into cities and towns because that's what's convenient. That's what the system wants. So we've been deprived of having land, just as Kritka has said. And that's really taken something away from us all. We've been robbed of our birthright of being able to run around on the grass and climb the trees. That's just something that we don't have anymore.
Yeah, they took the land. This is the extent of outing us, the land. Well, if you don't have the land, you can't survive free. Well, to defend our competitors. If you have the land, but you don't even need a house. We need just for shelter. Defense on your own. But the most important with the food, we can't study. Of course, shows that it's important too. That's why we have a land. We have land we can make the dwelling to our liking, our being, and the rest of it is for the poor. What do you think in an old day? If you look at the old houses, little house, and biggest garden, people was aware of the value of the land. That is your independent. That is your living. That is your livelihood. And at the end of that land, they treasure because they know it's then cool.
Yeah, that's a huge point about dependent, because the system wants us to be dependent. We doesn't want us to be independent. And that means it doesn't want us to be mature. It wants us to remain immature and dependent on the system.
Yeah. And think out when you come to the market and shows happens because that's the third vision. If you experience it, you feel suddenly how you move. And this is what happened to us. This is the situation. And he's trying to encourage people to think about this. And he tries to go back to land, not only because also the land is done, but we have to take care of it, not to damage further. And we should do everything in our life if we have a good heart.
Einstein called it the circle of compassion. Another I'm a great fan of Einstein. But I think there are other people that have called it the circle of compassion. We all have a circle of compassion, and in life is all about actually trying to widen our circle of compassion, spread it out to embrace more. Some people just consumed about themselves and looking after their own self-interest. Other people might embrace their whole family, and then there's others that will embrace their whole town or their own race or their own gender. I mean, they have very narrow ways of looking at it. But then you've got people that expand it to include animals, and they become vegan from that process. And if you keep expanding it, then eventually you'll come to the realization that fruit is the food. Not that fruit is always ideal, but the ideal is fruit. The ideal is to be growing it yourself on your own land. That's what the ideal is.
Yeah. And that's why, again, that's nasty. You have such perfect versions. As much you can, and if you have a good seed, you then fresh it then, and share then you have a seed saver and show for things like that going on all around the globe. Especially lately, the big event happens to you, so when people realize how they depend, and they took more interest into their own health, into growing actually some food if they have a little bit of friend. They realize they even move, but the people move to some city to something and so on. People who put us for this. And that's another problem today. The money, but this is the real best, and there is the food term. And we are just losing nature, actually, every second.
Anyway, I think we've more than answered the question once more. So
Yes.
it's okay with you.
Yeah.
Goodbye from me.
And a goodbye to me. We love you. We spirituate you. And don't forget about love. That love. The most important things in your life. Therefore, cultivate it in your heart. And if you do that, your eyes person's opening more and more. So all the best till next time.